texted him at 10 a.m. and he didn't reply.
Exactly.
And then he texted you at 1 p.m. Oh, my bad. Oh, my bad. I just saw this. I just saw this.
I know all about it, man.
I just saw this.
I really just saw it. Like, I went to sleep at 6 and then woke up at 10:30 and I just saw your text.
That's his favorite line. I saw it at 6 a.m., but then I went to sleep and forgot about it till 2.
I really do. Because I go to work at 1:30 and I'm like, I'm not answering my phone. He FaceTimed me at work. I was like, bro, I'm at work.
I think I butt dialed you, honestly.
Whoops.
It happens with the iPhone now. I do that a lot.
Really?
That
was an Android thing for me.
Well, I think it's sometimes the emergency contacts. Because like my dad will call me. He's like, you just called me 15 times. It's like, I've heard about 10 of your orders already. I'm like, I'm sorry.
That's that. I was in the back of the kitchen checking my fantasy lineup and just put my phone in my pocket without locking it.
But first,
that's me for the last 3 years in a row.
When you put your phone in your pocket, you got to turn it off. Make sure the lock is on, and the screen. You got to put that part facing inward, not outward, because the most sensitive shit will trigger your phone. And I'm like, oh
yeah,
wow.
But your big ass, that screen's getting sweaty.
Yeah, but I have pockets on the side of my pants because I'm smart. Hello, caller. What's your name and where you calling from?
Your name's Jake Ellenbogen, and I'm calling from upstate New York.
Jake,
what's up, Jake?
How you doing, my guy?
What's up, Mr. Downtown Rams, Mr. the podcast creator and network?
Mr. No, I'm not getting out of my seat. Mr. Press, the 20-year press veteran in the press box at the Senior Bowl. Legendary times.
But
absolutely. Mr. Hung out with you guys at a Waffle House in Mobile.
Wasn't that the greatest time? Shout out to Damian Lewis.
Well, that was the best.
Yeah, that dude, the chick in the green. Was she have all green on? I think she had a green catsuit on at the Waffle House. That was wild.
Wow, she put an impression on you, didn't she?
Everybody in the Waffle House turned around and was like, "Damn!" at the same time. It was. You had to be there. You had to be there. But Jake. So Hard Knocks is over. The Rams, Chargers are getting ready. They're gearing up for this weekend. But I mean, what's your take on the Rams? Their roster, their final 53.
Yeah. So I think I've had kind of a mixed bag of reaction to the Rams offseason, right? So. First and foremost, I understand some of their moves. I disagreed with them at the time. One being Todd Gurley. I wasn't a fan of paying extra money so you wouldn't have a running back that had the most touchdowns over the last 3 years in the NFL. And on top of that, Corey Littleton, who, I'm a huge fan of Littleton, and to see him go to the Raiders for pretty much the money they spent on Leonard Floyd, I felt like they totally dropped the ball on that end. But I understand after speaking with a few people around the team who've been at training camp, what they're going to be implementing in Brandon Staley's defense, it sounds to me like it's going to be a lot of nickel, and pretty much a third of the time they'll actually be playing a base 3-4. So because of that, the linebacker has been kind of devalued in that new scheme, and I think they kind of just did the numbers and felt as though they weren't going to be able to spend $10 million plus a year on Littleton when they were devaluing his position. So it's been a mixed bag of emotion. It's hard to. He's my favorite player in the NFL, and I just watching him go from UDFA to, I think he's a top 5 linebacker in football. It was obviously tough to see him go, but then the Rams hit it home in the draft. They had what I would call the best draft I've ever seen the Rams have. They got Cam Akers out of Florida State, somebody that's proven that he can run behind anybody. Florida State post Jimbo Fisher era. I'm sure you guys know. They weren't
times.
a sight to, they weren't fun to watch. we'll put it that way. Their offensive line was depleted. They just weren't getting those same recruits they got during the Jameis Winston era. And, basically, you saw Cam Akers, and he's getting hit immediately when he gets the ball in the backfield. So, he was pretty much ready at that point, I think, just going through all that in college and, averaging the most yards after contact. Just pretty impressive feat there. He goes in the second round, and then the Rams ended up trading Brandon Cooks, who, believe it or not, I like Cooks, and I said that he got too much blame in the Super Bowl, on that infamous touchdown or would-be touchdown pass. But I'll tell you guys, I think Brandon Cooks is a one-trick pony, and he doesn't really have a lot of quick twitch. He's more of a straight-line speed guy, and I felt like he could be replaced. And when he signed the contract, I was happy for him. But when the injuries came up, I felt like, this isn't going to work out. And, of course, the Rams kind of felt that way as well, obviously with this concussion, his history. And, of course, he wasn't going to stop playing or anything like that, so they end up trading him. They get a second-round pick from the Houston Texans, 57th overall, and they draft Van Jefferson, a guy that you'll be hearing a ton of if you haven't already, out of Florida. So, you get those two guys to add to your offense. You get Terrell Burgess and, Terrell Lewis in the third round. Lewis is having a little bit of an issue with his knee. So he's going to be on the non-football injury list, but the Rams can expect to have him, somewhere week 4, week 5. And Burgess is a future safety of theirs. He was phenomenal at Utah. I've spoken with him twice throughout the process, before he was Ram and then after. He's a great guy. He's perfect to add to that roster, the we not me mentality. That's literally him. And then the Rams go out and they get who I believe was the number 1 tight end in the draft, in Bryson Hopkins in the 4th round, a guy to basically you stash this year. You let Gerald Everett build up his stock, so you can either trade him at the deadline, or if you don't need to trade him and you want to keep using him, and he's obviously a focal point of the offense, you can boost up that stock, and then, Les Snead plays the compensatory pick game. You're just boosting his value. And if you're not going to bring him back and it's going to be Higbee and Hopkins in the long run, the best you can do is just continue to push Gerald Everett up so everybody sees him around the league and thinks, okay, I'll give this guy $12 million a year, and then all of a sudden the Rams are getting a 3rd or 4th round compensatory pick. So, I like the Hopkins move. They got a guy that I wasn't exactly the biggest fan of coming out of the draft in Jordan Fuller, who he's also another future safety for them. He got a lot of first-team reps when Taylor Rapp was, out during training camp. So he is definitely somebody that I'm excited about. And then Tremaine Akram, I think, is going to play guard or tackle in the NFL for a long time. Just seems like a guy that's going to be in the league for 10 years. They stole him in the 7th round, and they got their kicker, Samuel Sloman, in the 7th round. So the Rams really nailed the draft. They had a couple off-season, mishaps in my opinion, but I think all in all, this roster is really starting to turn out the way it should. And guys, I think this is a playoff team. I know last year 9-7 would put them in the playoffs in this format, but last year was last year, and this year I think they arguably got better. I know that's kind of surprising to hear, but I think they arguably got better this year.
Speaking of which, I always like having you on the show, Jake, just because, you mentioned Corey Littleton, but I remember when you first came on the show and we're talking about the linebackers, and you were like, yeah, I'm not really worried about it because of Corey Littleton. And at that time, he'd only played limited snaps and special teams, but you called the shot. And even now, every time we talk, it's like you just keep getting better and better. You've taken the podcast to a network. You're doing writing, all the above. Like you said, you got sources now. So shout out to you. But my question is really, no worries, brother. But yeah, my question for you is, you talked a little bit about just kind of how the Rams changes internally, and you're saying that they could be a playoff team. But when you look at the division, you have the reigning NFC champions, You have Seattle, which was already up there last year and gave the Rams a lot of problems. And then you have the resurgent Cardinals, who made some moves and got a little bit better as well. So when you look at that division, like, how many wins do you see within that division? How do you see, your boys stacking up versus the rest of the NFC West?
Yeah, so it's a great question. I think right off the bat, you look at the 49ers and you have to imagine they're the favorite in the NFC, in the NFC West and in the NFC, honestly. I as much as I want to, discredit them because of the 49ers, it's hard. They have a good roster. I do think that they may have fidgeted a little too much with the defensive line, bringing back Arik Armstead and not bringing back DeForest Buckner and trading him away. Look, I'll tell you right now, I saw the guy that they drafted, in the first round. I saw him up close and personal, at the Senior Bowl. And I'll tell you right now, and you guys did as well, I mean, he can play. This is somebody that is a little new to the game of football, but he picks up things quickly. Javon Kinlaw, of course, who I'm talking about. And Kinlaw, for the long term, is going to be special, I think. But I'd be lying if I said, Javon Kinlaw's ceiling is probably what DeForest Buckner was. So I don't feel like they got better compared to last year. And I look at this team, and right now, with the injuries and everything that's going on, I think that's a little bit of a problem. They've had a little bit of a unlucky spout of injuries with the wide receiver position. I mean, they just went out. Yep. They signed Kate Austin. Travis Benjamin opted out due to COVID. And, Austin got hurt. Jalen Hurts out for the year, somebody I was really excited to see, just as a football fan. Not, obviously I'm a Rams fan, so I don't want to watch it. But, I watched Jalen Hurts at Baylor and Tennessee. He can play. So, all around, I think they have a good roster, but I don't think they're better than last year, and I think that's the opportunity for the Rams. Now, when you look at, for instance, the Seattle Seahawks, I've always said, and people disagree with me, Seattle, for the most part, over the last few years, have had an average roster. They've had a roster they could have gone 7-9 or 6-10 with. Yeah. Russell Wilson has been the deciding factor for them. He has basically carried a team that I felt is extremely overrated every year. That's not because I'm a Rams fan. When you look at their team, it's not the greatest roster, and they really haven't had a good offensive line. It's a testament to what Russell Wilson does. He's never missed a game. He's never missed a start. So, Russell Wilson is just a phenomenal player, and he, brings them up. Now, they lost Jadeveon Clowney, and I know everyone's, freaking out. What are they going to do about that? They really like Benson Mayowa. They like Alton Robinson, their fifth-round pick out of Syracuse. But I'm just going to say this right now, guys. People are not talking about him. L.J. Collier, he got so much flack, and the Seahawks got so much flack for picking him in the first round last year in the 2019 NFL Draft out of TCU. I saw him at the Senior Bowl. I know this guy can play. Furthermore, he battled injury last year, so he didn't really get an opportunity. This is his year, and I think he is going to make it so, he may not be Jadeveon Clowney, but he doesn't have to be. I think he's going to fill that void.
As long as he's not Malik McDowell.
Oh, sorry, what were you saying?
As long as he's not Malik McDowell.
That is such a shame. He really had an opportunity special, but I hear you there. But they got a guy that I really like, Damian Lewis. You guys know. I'll tell you right now. Kenneth was literally taking a picture of me interviewing. He got the infamous picture interviewing Damian Lewis after the Senior Bowl game. But yeah, I like Damian Lewis. I think he'll help with Ethan Pochik inside, and then of course they still have Dwayne Brown. But when I look at this team, I like the acquisition. They traded for Quentin Dunbar. He's been a little bit of a troublemaker off the field, I guess. Everything that went on with him and the Giants corner that just got released, Baker. But, I think this is a solid team. I have the Seahawks missing the playoffs, though. I think this will be the year they miss the playoffs. I know it sounds
Hey.
weird that the 17, but